Hello everyone, Danny here today to talk to you about the audiobook, The Fighter's Mind, Inside the Mind of a Fighter, written by Sam Sheridan, narrated by Nicholas Techosky. And Mr. Techosky, I apologize if I mispronounced your name there, although I don't believe I have. I also need to apologize to my viewers. This video is going up late. I'm sorry about that. I don't really have any excuse. I quite honestly lost track of what day of the week it was. Woke up this morning, went, it's Friday, I gotta post a video. So I apologize. I do have exciting news though. So in roughly 2 weeks, I'm going to do my first collaboration with another YouTuber. So if you check out the channel Dro Talks, that's my buddy Dro. He lives in Texas. He does reviews of audiobooks like I do, and him and I are going to do a collaboration together, and it should go up in roughly 2 weeks. It's new for both of us. We've never done it before, so this should be fun. A whole lot of fun. I'm actually very excited about it. And Dro is a fellow veteran like I am. So we both love audiobooks. A lot in common there. And check out his channel, Dro Talks. Now, to this book. This is a book that I got based upon the title, The Fighter's Mind, Inside the Mind of a Fighter. I was like, oh, this is going to give me all kinds of really good tips on how fighters think and prepare themselves for training, for diet, how they think to stick with their discipline, how because it takes a lot to become a professional fighter. You've got to be very disciplined. You've got to be very dedicated. You put in long hours. You sacrifice things that other people aren't willing to sacrifice. I know an MMA fighter. My son's dating his daughter. My son's actually training to be an MMA fighter underneath him, Mr. Chris De La Rocha. And that's not my son, that's the MMA fighter. So I know what they have to go through in order to reach the level of a professional in this sport and to fight for the UFC. So I thought, wow, this is going to be a book that's going to give me just all kinds of good stuff. Didn't give me any of that. Not any of that. Not a bit of it. No. What it did do, though, was absolutely fascinate me. This was a book I could hardly put down. So what the author does, Mr. Sheridan gives you the history of some avenue of fighting. He starts off talking about wrestling and the original, fighting and grappling that wrestling was. He tells you about some of the superstars, although nobody knows them, so they're not really stars. They were just giants in that field. A wrestler, I can't remember his name because it's at the beginning of the book, but a wrestler that, high school, college, lost one match. He won gold in the Olympics, and he tells you all about him, and then he goes and he interviews him. And when he interviews him, he asks specific questions that are aimed to give you an eye into the fighter's mind, not on how he trained, not on how he dedicated, but on just his thoughts towards fighting. Why would you want to do this? What makes you want to be a fighter? Now, one of the things that the author does that I really, really like, he portrays the fighter without trying to twist it to fit the author's own views of what the author thinks. And how do I know the author does that? So you'll have fighters that the author interviews, and they grew up on the street. They grew up in a rough life. They're full of anger. They're full of bitterness. They cuss. They swear. They're fighting because they've got a lot of rage built up inside. And when the author is interviewing them, you get the feeling, wow, that must be the life of the author. The author must have grown up on the street. The author must have had a hard scrabble life. The author obviously cusses and swears a whole lot. And then the author turns around and interviews a fighter who's a Christian and who fights because he believes that it's God's will for him to fight. It's what God wants him to do. And he quotes scripture verses and he does all this stuff. And you go, wow, oh, the author must be a Christian. Obviously, the author believes in the Bible and this, that. So And it does that with every person. Oh, wow, that's the... No, that's just the fighter. And he does such a good job that he's the interviewer. And by the end of the book, you do get a good feel for the author, but it takes the entire book, because what really comes out in each of these is the person that he's interviewing. And he does an amazing job with that. And it's fascinating. And he talks about subjects that you don't even really think about, has MMA and what MMA has evolved to become the ultimate fighting style. And in other words, is no one uses Taekwondo in the ring anymore. Does that mean that Taekwondo is a lesser form of fighting than what they do in the ring, the kickboxing and the grappling that they do in the ring? All these other forms of fighting, are they a lesser form of fighting? And he talks to a fighter about that. And if you want to know what the fighter thinks on that, which the fighter probably does not think what you think the fighter thinks on that matter. The fighter actually has an incredibly intelligent answer to that question, and it'll probably catch you by surprise. So listen to the book, check it out. He asks questions like, what makes you, fighting nowadays, the modern day, when he talks to some of the modern MMA fighters, modern day fighting has become a gladiatorial sport. As a fighter, you are getting paid to step into the ring and to dominate and to harm another human being for our entertainment. How does that set you? How are you okay with that? That's not anything I would ever think about. I didn't even think of the fact that I knew that boxing and MMA was two guys going at it, trying to harm each other, and it was entertainment. But I never thought about it from the fighter's standpoint. How do you deal with the fact that you're the person getting paid to step into the ring, risk your health? Fighters have died in the ring, risk your life for other people's entertainment. And if you win by doing maximum harm to another human being. How is that mindset that gets you there, kind of a thing? He covers a lot. He doesn't just cover MMA. He covers a lot of different sports. Now, he does cover MMA. He covers a lot of what you would expect him to cover, the Gracies. If you know anything about MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, then you know who the Gracies are. He covers them. He even interviews some of them. But he branches off into some other... Chess comes into play. I had his name in my mind and I just lost it. Bobby Fischer. He talks to and interviews Bobby Fischer, the kid that was this chess superstar, and they made a movie about him. And now he's doing Tai Chi. And I learned a lot I didn't know about Tai Chi. I mean, when I thought of Tai Chi before, I just pictured, old people out at the park going... And I know I'm doing it wrong. I don't know anything about Tai Chi. Did you know there's a contact sport associated with Tai Chi? I didn't know that. Bobby Fischer is a world champion in the contact sport of Tai Chi. I no clue, none whatsoever, that there was a contact sport with Tai Chi. He doesn't just talk to fighters. He talks to trainers. He talks to people who run the schools. He goes to other countries, the countries where a lot of these, like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where goes to the roots of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, to Brazil and to the schools from Brazil, and gives you a feel for the environment that created Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and what it's like to be someone who grew up in that country and who attends one of those schools. And it's like anything else where we're used to the American version of it. You go to a foreign country and you discover true Italian food isn't what you get at Olive Garden. True Mexican food isn't what you get at Chevy's. You go to the country and it's close, but it's a little different. Well, some of it is quite different with some of these countries, and some of it is quite close. And you get that. The author brings you into that world because he goes to some of these places and he stays there for a week or two, and he actually does some of the training. And he does talk about some different matches. He does talk about the fighter's views on some aspects of training, not much. If this is a book that you're thinking, oh, I'll get it because I'll get a lot. My son, Justin, who is training to be an MMA fighter, was like, I don't want to listen to that book because you're not going to learn anything about techniques from a book. It's a terrible way to learn. That's not what the book is about. However, he does address, he has a discussion with some fighters about like gi versus no gi training. What the difference are, some trainers, I actually think it's trainers that he talks with about that. Gi versus no gi training. There is language in this book. The fighting and the brutality, that's not something that really comes out in the book. I mean, it's there, but it's when he describes things, he's not describing any actual fight. So as far as listening to it around children goes, there's just the language. That is the only thing that I would warn about. When he's interviewing a fighter who swears, if the fighter swears, it's in the book. The narrator is an excellent choice for a narrator. He has a voice that it's very easy to listen to. I would be listening, I would look up, 3 hours have gone by. I have no clue 3 hours have gone by. And this is a nonfiction book. It's rare for me to get into. Typically with a nonfiction book, I like, okay, this chapter is 30 minutes long. I'm going to put in 30 minutes, and then I'm going to go listen to a fiction book, which I will thoroughly enjoy. Literally 3-4 hours would go by. I'd be doing my wood burning or whatever I'm doing, and I'd look up and I'd be like, oh, snap. Wow, I wonder how far into the book I am now, because it draws you in. It engrosses you. Once again, I apologize for the tardiness of this video. However, if you like the video, please hit the like button. If you like my channel, subscribe, turn on notifications. Questions, comments, any kind of feedback is what the comment section is for. Put it in there. But most importantly, no matter what else you do today, make sure that today you listen to at least one really good audiobook, and I highly recommend The Fighter's Mind, Inside the Mind of a Fighter by Sam Sheridan. Thank you.